what we need to do is, yes, those habits are awesome. But people always say, why do I'm doing all these things and I'm not getting better? Or I do it for a little while and it keeps coming back. The reason that happens is because that's the person that does this. They have the crappy fish tank, and then they take all the water out of the tank. They take all the dead fish out. They clean the tank inside and out. They put everything brand new in there, put new water in there, and they feel good for a little while. But 2 weeks later, the same thing happens again. Why? Because they didn't take care of the filter system that sits below the tank that keeps the water clean, and that's the lymphatic system. So you need to take care of that first. Then you do the nutrients.
My guest, Perry Nickelston, he is a chiropractic physician with a primary focus on performance enhancement, corrective exercise, and metabolic fitness nutrition. Dr. Perry is an expert in movement assessment and diagnosis. Certified and trained as a functional movement specialist, he uses programs designed to find your source of pain, dysfunction, and correct it. All right, Perry, as I said, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm so honored. I heard of you listening to Aaron Alexander's podcast, and I was just so intrigued by the knowledge you were sharing, and you were so passionate about the subject that I wanted to have on this podcast, and that is about the lymphatic system. And I know you speak a lot of knowledge behind everything there is lymphatic, so we'll get jamming on all that. So I just welcome you on the podcast. Thank you again for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I'm very, very excited. And yes, I will go a little crazy when we talk about lymphatics. I love the lymph, and I encourage everybody else to love their lymph. And thank you so much for listening to my podcast interview with him. We had a really good time, for sure.
Yeah, it was a great episode. Well, so I'm super excited about this. I know because you've dedicated your life to learn more about the lymphatic system so you could heal yourself and also others. So I would love if you could share kind of your journey, what started your study of the lymphatic system specifically, and how you're helping others today and optimizing their health and overall wellness.
Great question. Thank you very much. Well, honestly, it's like a lot of people discover new things in their life is through a lot of suffering, right? Where you just get crushed by something. A lot of times it's your own illness, which it was for me, or it can be an illness of a loved one in your life. And then when you look for traditional answers of things that are supposed to work and they don't work, and then they don't have any more answers for you beyond, well, we don't know, right? And you have this, you feel disempowered in a way. And that's where I was. About 5 years ago, my body just decided to go a little crazy on itself, where they have a term for that called an autoimmune disease, where your body just decides to attack itself. But we now know that takes decades to start to happen. I'm in the healthcare field. I've been a practicing chiropractor for 26 years, and I've studied everything from pain science to neuroscience to movement to all sorts of different therapies. And I can do a lot of things to help somebody get better, but I couldn't get myself better. And I was really at a bad spot, honestly. I got so bad with traditional approaches to things that I was getting worse. And I got so bad that I had to stop practicing because I just really couldn't put two sentences together. What started to go was the brain fog, tiredness, fatigue, lethargy, beyond just a physical pain. And I had to stop traveling the world and teaching because I just didn't have the energy. And then I couldn't remember what I was going to say next. And that's not good, right? So I had basically a lot of inflammation in my body, and my body just didn't know what to do with it. And I was at my end. And I said, I got to take back control of myself. There's got to be something that I'm missing here, because we're not supposed to feel like that as human beings. I don't care what they tell you. And then I came across the lymphatic system when I went to a course in London by an invitation from someone, because I was starting to look at energy systems of the body, like energetic medicine, you might say, but more along the lines of what does it take for the body to make new cells that actually work. So I wanted to get to that fundamental process of healing and regeneration. And when I was there, people followed me on Facebook and Instagram and social media, and they were blown away at how awful I looked and how unhealthy I was. And at the time, I had a really bad problem of having a lot of infections in the body, sinus infections, lung infections, urinary tract infections. You name a body part, I could get it infected, right? And I was having a lot of mucus reactions, like sniffing and postnasal drip, clearing the throat, and things like that. And like every 10 to 15 seconds, I was clearing my throat or sniffing. And somebody said, we need you to come up to the room because, first of all, you're annoying everybody, right? And then we think we know what your problem is. And I was like, great, tell me. And they proceeded to put their fingers and assess all the major areas of my body where you have lymph nodes that gather. And we'll get into that later, what that means. But every single area was really painful and excruciating and swollen. And I didn't realize that. I was blown away at how much they hurt. And I never even thought about that at all. And they said, well, I think you have a lymphatic system problem. And I actually went, lymph what? Like, it didn't even cross my mind, because here's the thing. Out of all those areas that they touched, I knew about those areas, but when I would touch there, I was always thinking muscle, fascia, ligament, joint. I was thinking other structures of the body. I was not even considering lymphatic system of the body. And then once I gravitated towards understanding that what I'm actually taking care of and working with was the lymphatic system in these regions, I never looked back. And here's the thing, just after their assessment, I felt better than I felt in months just from that. And I say, okay, I'm on to something here. And then from there, I've been a man who's been on a mission. It's like my calling, I think. And that's what led me here today after all those years of an incessant need to learn and then share that with other people, because I don't want other people to suffer like I was suffering.
So one thing that I think is important that you kind of touched on a little bit is you're like, this is not normal to feel this way. Like, there has to be a reason, there has to be a root cause to why I'm suffering, why I'm getting autoimmune disease or the sniffles or whatever it may be, the mucus. So I think that is the key, is getting down to the root cause of our problems. And that's what's so intriguing to me about the lymphatic system. I'm learning a lot more about it. I just got a rebounder. I just dry brushed in the shower or right before my shower this morning. And it's just so fascinating, because I think it's one of those things that isn't really talked about too often, but it is so much part of our health and well-being, as it is actually part of our immune system. So I would love if you could share what specifically is the lymphatic system. So for the people that might have an idea, they've heard the term, but they don't know exactly what it is, how it functions, and what it does for us. Can you explain to that person that has no clue, basically?
Oh, I would love to. Thank you very much for that. But before that, I want to say you're right on. The body never does anything without a reason. We just have to figure out what it is. And later on, I just hit reframe, where I know now that the mucus is where your body tries to coat things and protect you by coating it. And it uses fluids to do that. Fluids are protection in the body. And once you realize that, you can figure out why it's doing what it's doing. And when you know that the lymphatic system, like you said before, is a part of the immune system, that makes sense now for what I was having happen, right? So I had some underlying inflammation in my body, some toxins in my body. I'll get into that in a moment. And then my body was just saying, hey, lymph, we need you to take care of these things for me. So when you look at it, lymphatics is not even really the problem, because the lymph is just doing what it's supposed to do. It's trying to kill things. So your immune system has one job, and that's kill stuff. That's it. That's its job. Sometimes it just gets stuck in overdrive and it just starts to kill you, right? It just nonstop like that way. So the lymphatic system is a huge part of your immune system. It's actually probably the largest part of your immune system. And most of your immune system we know now lives in your gut, in your abdomen, your intestines. And 80%, they think, 70-80% of your immune system strength, depending on the references that you read, resides in your gut. I want you to think about that for a moment. That's huge. And it just is no accident that Mother Nature put the majority of your lymph right there with it. So when stuff breaks through the gut and you have gut inflammation, the lymphatics is the very first system that's there to greet whatever breaks through it. And that's its job, is to capture it and protect you. But many people don't know that the lymphatic system is a huge part of your cardiovascular system as well. It connects directly with the veins of your body, and the veins of your body are what bring waste, metabolic waste, which is called cellular waste, back to your heart, and deoxygenated blood. It doesn't have oxygen in there, and that hooks directly with the lymphatic system. So how well your heart works depends on how well your lymph works, and people really need to understand that. And blood flow, like red blood that gives oxygen and nutrients to tissue, is beholden to how well the lymphatic system works as well. So lymph is huge. It's just that I'm flabbergasted of why medicine has overlooked it for all these centuries, right? It's my mission to change that. But here's the way it works. The lymphatic system is basically the sewage system of your body, which means it's designed to get rid of things you don't want in there. In your house, you flush the toilet for stuff you don't want, right? Flush, boom, out, good to go. If that system breaks down, nobody's going to want to be living in your house at all, right? And that's the same thing that happens with your body. Your lymph is supposed to get rid of bacteria, viruses of all different types, right? Parasites, cancer, fungus, metabolic waste, which is regular cells of your body dying every day by the billions so you can make new ones. That's waste, and that has to get out. And it's also considered a toxin when it can't get out. And it has to get rid of toxins in the body. Toxins that we call endogenous, that are inside of the body, like what we mentioned of cells just dying and then needing to get out, but exogenous toxins, things that you breathe in, things that you stick on your skin, all those things that you stick in your mouth is probably the biggest exogenous toxins that you put in. Every time you open your mouth, you put things from the outside world into the section that has the largest part of your immune system, right? So when that system is working well, then you have a much better chance of staying at optimal health. And you're going to get sick because you're supposed to get sick. That's having an immune system. You get sick, you get better. You get sick, then you get a stronger immune system, you get a smarter immune system. So if you do get sick again, you don't stay sick as long, or maybe you don't get sick at all. Somebody's in a room and you sneeze, everybody gets sick, but you don't, right? That means your immune system is different, it's stronger. If the lymphatic system doesn't work well, and that can be from anything, that's life coming at you sometimes, then you'll see that lymph needs to move through two primary mechanisms in the body. One is moving yourself a lot. So the more you move, the more you move lymphatics. And in the world today, people don't move a lot. Or if they do move, they move the same way all the time. They don't move in different variety of ways. And the other one is breathing in through your nose, particularly, and through your diaphragm, which is a muscle that sits down on the top of your abdomen like a dome. That changes pressure in your body and it moves fluid when you do that. And most people don't breathe through the diaphragm either, if they breathe at all, because they're up under stress. So you've got the two primary mechanisms that are stuck and your pumps don't work. Then lymph becomes stagnant. So it's an overload. It just can't keep up. And then what happens is it slowly begins to deteriorate. And then you don't notice it right away. You notice it over the times, and you start to get these things that people just say, well, that's normal part of aging, BS, stuff like that. Tired, fatigue, lethargic, brain fog, arthritis, pains here, pains here. That's just different ways that your body decided to manifest symptoms or disease names because of the underlying inflammation. So even if you have all of those things, you still have to ask, why in the hell did you get those things in the first place? Like, you didn't have them yesterday and now you got it today. It's the process of your body slowly beginning to break down. And the lymph doesn't just stop working. right? Because if it did stop working totally, you'd be dead in 24 hours. That's how powerful it is.
Wow.
Stop, turn off, hard stop, period, you're done. But if it doesn't work well, you suffer what we call a slow death, which means that you just lose optimal health. And then you feel like most Americans, at least, where you just don't, you feel yucky. And you think that that's the way everybody feels. And I'm like, no, you're not supposed to, no matter what they tell you, right? And then, so when I started to look at lymphatics, I was very surprised that there wasn't a lot of information out there on it, not available to find. And I'm in this profession and I didn't even know about it. So there's no way in the world a regular person is going to have a chance in hell of finding anything about it, because I've never had one doctor. I saw so many doctors when I was sick, not a single one said anything about lymph. Because the only time you ever hear about lymphatics is two things. You got cancer, because it can spread through the lymphatics, but it also kills cancer cells, but it can spread through the lymphatics. And that should tell you something already, that if something can spread cancer to any part of your body, it might be a little important to look at, which means it goes everywhere. Right? The other one is where you've got what they call lymphedema, where you've got a body part that becomes extra swollen, like you have one leg that looks like an elephant trunk and the other ones don't, or you have inflammation in the body. Those are the two biggest ways that most people know there's an issue with it. Otherwise, they don't even talk about it.
Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard that on your end. My iTunes popped up. Sorry for the interruption. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's going to add right to the hard stop. That's good. Yeah. I didn't hear a thing. It's all good.
So weird. Anyways, I have so much to say to that. So first of all, you're so right. That is not talked about too often. And actually, ironically, I remember hearing about the lymphatic system through somebody close to me that had breast cancer. And she was explaining to me that the cancer, when she got a mastectomy, that it didn't leave her milk duct, but she said that, which was a stage 0, I guess they caught it very early, but it was actually quite large, the cancer, how much it was filled in her milk duct. But she told me that if it went to her lymph nodes, it would have been all over her body, and it would have been either a stage 4 or 5. I forgot which one it is, but that was exactly the point, is the lymph system, once it gets into the lymph node, then it's able to travel all across your body. And that's when it's talked about as cancer, which is the last thing you want to hear about the first stage of addressing your lymph system. So that is one point that was quite interesting. And then the other thing, as you mentioned, it's not talked about much. And I think that's the interesting thing. I read that in the US medical industry, they don't even consider the lymphatic system stagnation as a cause of disease. But however, in like ancient systems of medicine, such as I think it's TCM and Ayurveda, they always look at it as the first place to look for is the stagnation where your body is ill. So why do you think the US doesn't address this system at all? Like, have you researched that? Like, why are they not looking at the lymphatic system?
That's a great question. I ask myself that every single day, because I'm like, don't you see what I see? But I almost in a way can't fault them, because I was in the system and nobody even highlighted it for me. So it's not something that they think at the moment is any big deal. So you come out of it not realizing, well, in my world as a chiropractor, what do I need to look at lymph for? I'm just, I'm musculoskeletal, we call it, muscles, joints, fascia, that connective tissue, things like that. And maybe if you're lucky, somebody will take a look at your organs of your body. I wish I could answer that question, but if you look back I've started to look back at old school anatomists and researchers, because they had a unique way of looking at things. They didn't have as much technology, so they were forced to think of things in different ways. And they talked about lymph a lot a couple hundred years ago. And especially in osteopathic medicine, Andrew Taylor Still, who's the founder of osteopathy, bases his program on blood flow and lymph flow, lymphatic flow. So when I read that, I was all in, right? And it was talking about the fluid systems of the body and how important that is. He calls it the fluids of life. And interestingly enough, though, they've gotten away from that I know now people have graduated from osteopathic school and they said we hardly talk about lymphatics because they're gearing more towards the MD type of approach to things. But if you go back and you look at the classic writings, it's there and talked about a lot, but it's gotten shoved in the vault and not really looked at. But I think lymph is like the new fascia, which means it used to be a time when medicine didn't even think about fascia, which is connective tissue. Surgeons would just cut right through it and move it aside and get to their target and sew you up and everything's good. But now fascia is tied to everything. And I think maybe lymph will be that way as well, especially now that we can have technology where Western medicine has a thing of they don't believe it if they can't see it and prove it, like in triple blind studies all the time. And then now they're finally having some technology that can maybe catch up to looking at those things. But I've studied many different disciplines, and I study different disciplines for that very reason, because they have a different perspective, even though they're talking about the same thing. Ayurvedic medicine, lymphatic is top of the food chain. That's number one. And then traditional TCM, just Chinese medicine, is really high up there as well. And you will see that when they talk about qi, that's flow, that's blood flow, and blood flow goes with lymphatic flow, like that way. So I've blended in a lot of that teaching and a lot of that work with stuff that I found from 100, 200 years ago, with the things that they're starting to find now, which has been really great. So research every year, honestly, is starting to improve in lymphatics. And it's only recently that they're now saying, well, we didn't think that you had lymphatics anywhere that was involved with the brain. And then now they know that it's a big player in there as well for eliminating toxins from the brain, a big player. And that made sense now when I think about how my brain went out to lunch when I had so much inflammation and toxicity in the brain, and that they're looking at it now as being tied to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and degenerative diseases of the brain, which they know start in the gut first anyway, and then it travels to the brain. So this really great connection. And honestly, my mission right now is to bring back this notion of the body is one piece. And we have all these different systems of the body that people talk about, and then they focus on, and they become a specialist in a system, and then they stop looking at other systems. But more importantly, they stop looking at how the one system they're an expert in relates to all the other systems and is beholden to how well they work. And so now I tell people all the time that no system in the body ever works alone. And that's like digestive system, cardiovascular system, lymph system, nervous system. They never get injured alone, and they never heal alone. So when you can see now, when you look in one area of the body of how every system is there, there's no way, at least the way I look at it, there's no way you can ever say that this is the only system that you're going to be working with. I think the lymphatic is probably the most influential in changing all of the other systems based on what I've been able to see. And we'll probably talk about that in a little bit of why that is. But if you can get that system under control, you can make a huge, profound effect on changing / improving all of the other systems. Because here's what I've discovered over my years of doing this. If you don't take care of the lymphatic system, then those other systems are really going to struggle to get back to their optimal level of where they could be. So it's a huge piece that everybody needs to have assessed to make sure it works as well as it can for that individual.
Yeah, absolutely. So going into that, so your company is called Stop Chasing Pain. And I know that you call the lymphatic system pretty much our aquarium, our body's aquarium. And I know, and this goes with anything, sometimes people are like, oh, I want to get healthy, so I'm going to start eating healthy food, but they don't address possibly already what's in their body and they need to get rid of. So why people do cleanses or detoxes. So talking about that, what would you say is, number one, how do we even determine if we have a problem with our lymphatic system, meaning a stagnant lymphatic system? And then also cleaning our aquarium being the first thing we should do before we start introducing the next things.
That's a great
Those are
question.
kind of two-part question,
yeah,
but
I'll try to get it all. I'll probably give you even more. But if I forget, make sure you let me know. I have this joke that I say, but I'm not really joking. Everybody has a lymphatic system problem. They just don't know it yet, which means I just need to determine how much is affected and how severe it is. In my world, it's very easy. If you walk in to see me and you're asking me for help and you have an autoimmune disease or chronic pain, I know it's involved somewhere, because you can't get to that point unless it is. I just have to figure out what part, how long you may have had it, and then what we need to do about it, right? And so how do you know that's involved? One, you can do an assessment, it's very simple, where there's primary areas of your body where you have what they're called lymph nodes, and you mentioned that before. The lymph nodes are areas that almost look like small little kidneys together, that cluster together. And they're like a kidney, that they're supposed to have stuff come into it. And then the immune system comes on in there and begins to kill, purify, detoxify from one node to the next. You have over 600 to 700 lymph nodes in the body, depending on the resources that you follow. And 1/3 of the 600 to 700 is from the neck up. So if you think about that for a moment, why did nature put 1/3 of 700 from the neck up? Because it's going to have something to do with making sure that your neck and your brain get rid of toxins, right? And those guys gather in areas of your body that you're supposed to have a lot of movement in. So the primary area where they're located are at the top of your neck, right behind your angle of your jaw, right below your ear, at the top of your spine. That's the largest lymph node of the neck on both sides. That's why the doctor feels underneath your jaw a lot when you're sick, for your tonsils, to see if you're swollen underneath the jaw. So that's the largest lymph node in the neck. And then you've got it at the bottom of the neck above the collarbone. So we always check for puffiness or swelling in that space above your collarbone. Then another one is in where the shoulder is, where the shoulder joins the chest muscle. When you talk about breast cancer, and in here, that's where they usually get it, and what they call the pectoral, which is the pec region, the chest, and axilla, armpit region. That's a huge gathering in there on the right and the left. The other one is in your abdominal region, around your navel, and the space from your navel to the bottom of your sternum is where the largest lymph node in your body sits. It can be about the size of a walnut. It can be really big. And then you've got it around the groin. So the crease of your groin on either side, right there. And then behind the knee is the other big one. So when you come in to see me, I look for those areas to be puffy or swollen or tender to the touch. And they're not supposed to be puffy or swollen unless you're sick, but they're not supposed to stay puffy or swollen. That's the point. They're supposed to go down. Then I'm going to look for pain when I touch them. That's a sign that you have it. But a lot of people have pain in there and they don't realize it, like I did. I was very puffy and swollen when I was sick. I put on about 30 pounds of inflammation and body fat, because your body puts on fat.
That's insane.
Your body will lay down fat to try to protect you from toxicity. So fat is an organ. So when your lymphatic system doesn't work well, you'll usually end up putting on weight. And so you don't realize that those areas are painful because nobody touched them. But you'll have a lot of these symptoms that I mentioned: brain fog, tiredness, fatigue, lethargy, migrating joint pain. From this joint today, it goes to the next one. A lot of skin issues all over the body. You can manifest it. You say, hey, doc, what can be linked to lymph? You give me the name, I'm going to put it there and say it can be linked to lymph. That's the body aquarium analogy, right? That the aquarium is like the lymphatic. It's the fluid in the aquarium. And all the cells of your body are like that fish living in the aquarium. See, the way medicine works is if you have a problem with the fish in the tank, they're going to try to take care of the fish. And I'm like, well, that ain't going to help you well if the tank that it's living in is toxic and it's not an environment that's conducive to healing. Got to take care of that first, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the key. We assess those regions. I talk to you and talk about your history, right? And then I could do more of an in-depth examination and be able to find some things. The area that is usually most painful is in the abdomen region. It's usually excruciatingly painful in there when the lymphatics are backed up. It's not supposed to hurt in your abdomen at all. supposed to have no pain there. And here's the thing. We try to get ourselves healthy by, like I said, eating nutritious things, which is great, changing some of our habits. But there's two things that I've whittled this down to from learning from many different individuals of what causes chronic disease, right? And I'm tying it to chronic pain as well. It's deficiency and toxicity. I'll make it simple. What does that mean? Deficiency means you don't have enough of what you need. Most of the time, it's nutrients and oxygen. Those are the big ones that most people don't have enough of, nutrients and oxygen. If the cells don't get nutrients and oxygen, guess what? You ain't making a new cell that works.
Yeah.
It just ain't happening, right? So I don't have enough of that. Or I have toxicity, which means I have too much of something, right? Too much in your body, all the stuff that I mentioned before, which means you have too much that's in there and it can't get out, or you have too much coming from the outside world coming on in that you can't get rid of fast enough. Does that make sense? You follow that? It's coming
Absolutely.
in too fast, faster than it can get rid of it. And then now you have so much toxicity in the body that if you put nutrients in, the nutrients can't get to the cells because they're too toxic. So then you're putting the nutrients in, and the nutrients end up becoming toxic as well.
Gosh.
So you're sitting in a fish tank that is no longer clear. It's got fungus, it's green, fish are floating. You got this yucky film over thing in your body. They call it biofilm. And then what we need to do is, yes, those habits are awesome, but people always say, why do I'm doing all these things and I'm not getting better? Or I do it for a little while and it keeps coming back. The reason that happens is because that's the person that does this. They have the crappy fish tank, and then they take all the water out of the tank. They take all the dead fish out. They clean the tank inside and out. They put everything brand new in there, put new water in there, and they feel good for a little while. But 2 weeks later, the same thing happens again. Why? Because they didn't take care of the filter system that sits below the tank that keeps the water clean, and that's the lymphatic system. So you need to take care of that first. Then you do the nutrients like that way, right? So it's just like having the single fish in a fish bowl, right? It's the water that the fish lives in. And I make the analogy with a flower too. I mean, if your flower is dying, don't blame the flower, blame the environment that it's sitting in, because that's where you got to go, right? And once you realize just that simple two-step process, then here's the key. In osteopathic medicine, they had this phrase that really stuck with me. Drainage precedes supply. So I thought about that for a minute. Drainage precedes supply. That means you have to drain out the inflammation / edema, drain out the toxins, then you supply the body with the nutrients. So now what we do is we help get rid of the toxins first and decrease the amount of toxins going in. Then we start to add the nutrients that are going in there. If you just flip that order around, it can make a huge difference. What does that mean in my world? It's very simple. You always do lymphatic work first before you do anything else. That's what it means. So I check the lymph first. I treat the lymph first. I release the lymph first. Even if your lymph is doing awesome and you say, Doc, I've got a lymphatic system that's perfect. Like it's superhuman lymph. I'm like, okay, great, get on the table. I'm going to release it anyway. Because what I want to do is I want to stimulate those major areas to ensure that they keep working well, so that whatever I do in that session or afterwards, I know is going to be even that much more effective. Right? So people need to do some type of work every day to take care of their lymphatic system beyond moving and breathing. So here's the thing. And I'm in the fitness world a lot, and I have people say, Doc, I move all the time and I breathe through my diaphragm all the time because I took like 50 different courses on breathing. So shouldn't my lymph be good? Not necessarily, because sometimes it's too overloaded. It's too stagnant where that's not enough anymore. I need to go in and I have to help it. I have to give it some training wheels, you might say. Give it a helping hand, and then I stimulate it. Then I release it through my what I call lymphatic mojo program. Then you move. Then you breathe. So fluids need to move based on pressures. Okay, if I keep going, because I'm getting in
Go
the
for it.
zone
Yeah,
here.
you're in a yes, please.
So all those areas that I told you about where the lymph is located, right? Most of it's going to be at the top of the neck, at the bottom of the neck, at the arm, in the abdomen, in the groin, behind the knee. But they're everywhere. They're just not as large. They're at the tip of your fingers, at the bottom of your feet, and the top of your head. They go everywhere. And all of that fluid has to move back to one place. All the lymphatics drain into the vein system of the body right at the collarbone. So everything from your foot has to go to the collarbone. Everything in your hand has to go to the collarbone. Everything on the top of your head has to go to the collarbone. But fluid moves on pressure. It's called hydrodynamics. That's a principle in physics that says this: high pressure moves to low pressure. Think of a dam of water. When you drive over a dam, you've got no water on one side. I've got all this water on the other. Really high pressure where the water is, low pressure where there's none, right? And think of that as a stopgap, right? So let's say that is a lymph node that's clogged up. That means that stuff gets stuck there and it can't move any further. What if you open up that dam? If I open up the dam a little bit, the water automatically goes where? Right through to the low pressure side, right? So the lowest pressure for the lymphatics in your body is at the bottom of the neck. The highest pressure is at the hands and the feet and the top of the head. So that means all the fluid is high at the end, low at the neck. So that's where it always wants to flow, assuming that there's no blockages, that there's no dams there. So let me give you an example. Let's say somebody has a lot of swelling in the right knee or right ankle or right calf. It could be from an injury that was a couple of weeks ago and it still won't go down, or you're like, why in the hell is my ankle swollen today? I didn't do anything to hurt it. Or maybe on an airplane, right? You get a pressure change with that. So we know that that fluid has to go to my neck, and it has to go to the left side of your neck. So it drains to the left side of your neck. But in order to get to that neck, it has to clear the nodes that are behind your knee, in your groin, in your abs, behind your sternum, and then your neck. So let's say that you're stuck at the dam in your groin. Then all that fluid in your leg can't go past the groin. So what it does is it just says, well, no problem here. I'm just going to go right back down to your foot. No worries. So your inflammation stays down there. Then you start to get compromise in blood flow, because when you get stagnation in the groin, then you have blood flow problems. You get blood flow restriction. Can't get enough blood flow down, and you can't get enough toxins out because they get stuck at the groin. And then what happens in the leg? The whole leg is a stuck aquarium where you now have not enough nutrients and oxygen getting to the cells, and you have too much toxicity, and everybody treats the ankle that's swollen. And I'm like, that's good. You want to treat the ankle, but don't treat the ankle until you clear the knee, the groin, the abdomen, and the neck first. Because I want to make sure that when I treat the ankle with, like, maybe I use a therapy of massage, I do ice pack, I do heat pack, I do laser stim, I do muscle, I do whatever therapy you like, because here's the dirty little secret, they all work, right? And then, but I'm like, okay, well, you're trying to get rid of what in an injury? You're trying to get rid of swelling and inflammation, and you're trying to make new cells. What do you need to make a new cell that works? You need nutrients and oxygen and not a lot of toxicity. So all I want to make sure is this. I need to make sure that the flow of the system in the body that's innately put there, nature already knows what the hell she needs to do to help that ankle. You just got to make sure that there's no blockages for that to happen. That's what stop chasing pain means. That's this. Pain doesn't tell you what the problem is or where it is. It only tells you that there is a problem. So if you have a pain in your ankle, yes, you treat your ankle, but you need to look at everything else as well, right? Especially when it's chronic. Because sometimes it's just straightforward. If you hurt your ankle and you treat your ankle and it gets better, well, that's awesome. Sometimes a zebra's a zebra, and pat yourself on the back, you did a good job. But if it doesn't get better, don't blame the damn ankle. I want you to blame your thought. I want you to blame you is what I want you to blame. The treating physician. I want you to think, and I want you to start to put the puzzle piece together of moving beyond the ankle. But in medicine, we don't do that, because in medicine, you have an ankle guy. I got a knee guy. I got a hip guy. And I'm like, how about the whole body guy? Where's that one, right? So in my world, I'm going to press in the abdomen and see if it hurts. 9.99% of the time, it'll be excruciating in the abdomen. And if it's excruciating in the abdomen, I know you've got inflammation in the abdomen. You've got inflammation in your lymphatics. You've got a compromise in blood flow and the ability to reach your ankle and your foot. I'm not saying it's the only answer to your ankle and your foot, but I am telling you this: if I don't clear that block, I don't think you stand a chance in hell of getting that ankle back to where it could be. Does that make sense? So when you think of the bigger picture of how that's connected, and so what I found very interesting when I started to study cancer and the lymphatics and metastatic cancer is that the whole lymphatic system is connected. You can't separate the lymph in your right leg from the lymph in your left arm. They communicate with each other, okay? That they found that the one lymph node in the body that has a compromise can compromise the whole system. Where they had a metastatic node, let's say it could be in the right axillary region, but that here, metastatic lobe could compromise the entire lymphatic system. So you could have some swelling and inflammation down in your left leg that could be from the node up top. So then I started to extrapolate that in relationship to pain as well, to say, well, I know that you've got pain in your left leg, but none of the nodes in your left leg hurt or are swollen. So, but you're really swollen in the one on your right arm. And what I'm going to tell you from my experience is that when you clear the one on the right arm, guess what feels better?
It's interesting.
The left leg, right? Because that's how the body works. A system like that one. If you have a compromise, think about it this way. If I have a compromise in the right lymph node in my axillary arm, my body knows that. It's going to have to find some way to work around that. So what it might choose to do is have another part of your body step up and do a little bit more extra work, or maybe it's going to tighten down another part of your body to take stress off the right shoulder. So your body's always looking for a way to protect you and save you. Pain is not punishment, people that are listening. I need you to understand it's not a punishment. Pain is my definition of pain is this: pain is a request for change. Pain is a request for change. Your body is asking you, requesting you to change something. Most of the time it's a habit or a behavior, right? And in my world, when you are the treating clinician, it's to change your thought process is what I want people to think of. And once you have that view, I'm not really into teaching techniques so much anymore, honestly, because people say, what's your technique for releasing lymph? Yes is my answer, where you can release it any damn way you want. I just want you to understand the concept of the lymphatics, the roles that it plays, and the order that you have to release it in. Because the order that you release them in will be the determining factor of how well it works. How you choose to release it after you got the order that you release it, that's up to you, because it can be different for every person. Some people like it soft, some people like it hard, some people like it light, some people like vibration. That all depends on what reaction I see in your face and in your eyes and from your body when I'm doing it. So just because I use vibration on patient A doesn't mean patient B is going to like vibration. I'm just going to watch your body and see what it shows me. So, that's where it can be very individualistic, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to work because you didn't use vibration. You follow? So it's still going to work, because this holds true to the fundamental principles of the hydrodynamics and the blood flow. I just want people to realize that you need to check the nodes in your groin and behind your knee. How you choose to release it, well, that's entirely up to you. So I know I went on for like a long time there because
That's
that's what I
okay.
do, but I want people to really
So
get the
informative
picture of how these systems all interconnect. And I've spent 26 years in healthcare going after where things hurt. And we should, right? But I was always frustrated of why things kept returning all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if people are being truthful with me and they're doing what I'm asking them to do. There's got to be something that I'm missing. And honestly, it took my own pain and suffering for me to find it. I wouldn't have found it otherwise, because I started to look at different areas of the body, but still within only one system. So let me explain that. So let's say my right shoulder hurt. Then I started to branch out to say, maybe it's coming from how well my left hip joint moves, which is a classic combination. If the left hip joint doesn't move well, it can transfer and cause pain in the right shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a cross body pattern from walking. And so I started to put it together from muscle and fascia and joint, but I never ever thought to myself, what about blood flow? What if the blood flow on my left groin doesn't work well? What if the lymph in my left groin doesn't work well? Might that also affect the opposite shoulder? So then I started to look at that component, and then it all came into place. And when I found the lymphatics, I'm like, okay, this is what I've been searching for, because it was 5 years ago, for 21 years, and I found it.
Mm. Yeah, it's so important. And talking about the aquarium, I think this is the way you could really grasp how important the lymphatic system is the way you explain it. I remember I had a saltwater aquarium, and I remember I had a couple of fish dying, just out of nowhere dying. And of course, what do? You put the fish into a little bag, you separate them from the tank. And what do? You clean out the whole entire tank, put in whole new salt water. It's a whole process. It's a pain in the butt, but that's what you have to do. You have to get rid of the source, and also you have to look at the filtration and everything. So that whole idea of the aquarium, that is our body. So we need to get to the root of the toxicity. And so we could go into a whole lot about this. So I know you talked about we need to get that stagnant part moving. And it sounds like, from what you're talking about, is you look for the inflammation. Where are you inflamed? And in that point, you could tell if it's tender to touch, that's possibly where you need to get that stagnant part moving. Mm-hmm. Funny enough, I took my dog to the vet yesterday, and they said his lymph nodes on the back of his legs are swollen, and he has allergies a lot. And I've heard they've mentioned that before. And funny enough, prepping for this interview, I'm like, oh shoot, they were talking about possibly seeing why that lymph node is swollen. And at the time yesterday, I'm like, okay, I'm going to see if he gets better, because he was sick yesterday. But now, prepping for this interview, I'm like, well, now I'm concerned. Why is he having that? Besides allergies, there could be something more. And of course, they gave me the C word, and I'm like, obviously you get freaked out. Like, why is that swollen? There must be a root cause for that. So of course I'm going to address that. Totally different subject, but either which way, it's the lymph nodes. They address it. When it's swollen, there's a reason why it's swollen. We need to now look into the reason for that. So, gosh, well, yeah. So you talked about.
Let me address that for a moment, because here's the thing. It's case in point, right? You said they mentioned the C word. That when they see lymph node, that's the only thing they usually think of. Right? It might be this, and that's only one small component of it. Because when you have what's an allergic reaction, an allergy, that's an immune system response. Right? Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to have an allergic response to something, but then you're not supposed to stay with it. You're not supposed to have a reaction that keeps coming back. It's an immune system response. And allergic responses like that usually involve the immune system laying down a lot of mucus or swelling or inflammation. That's why you sneeze, right? That's why your throat gets clogged, or you get puffy or swollen, right? And your lymph nodes get swollen. So your lymph actually is supposed to get swollen when you're sick or you have an allergy problem, because that's its job. It says, okay, we're up, guys. We got to kill something. Let's go. And then it's supposed to not, right? But I want people to realize and think about that. If it's around the groin, it was on his hind legs, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what sits down there? That's the lymph nodes around the abdomen. And that's where most of your immune system sits. And they know they're tied allergy reactions to gut issues, right? So we know we're going to have to be doing some stuff with the abdominal lymph, right? So you can begin to get that system to flow and move and help get rid of the quote unquote toxins or the allergens that are coming along. And then you need to dig deeper and say, okay, well then why the hell do I have allergies, right? And then, so then you're coming and you're talking about an immune system response. So I know at least in the human world, when you have delayed onset allergies, which means that yesterday I didn't have allergies to peanuts and now today I do, out of nowhere, which happens to a lot of people, that comes down to a broken gut barrier called leaky gut or malabsorption syndrome. So when the gut barrier breaks, then you're open into allergic reactions. And guess what system is sitting right at the gut wall, right at the damn wall that's going to go after it first? The lymphatics, right? The lymphatics. So it all ends up tying together. What I want people to realize with the lymphatics is that just because you see the lymphatics swollen doesn't mean that you have the C word, but you can also have the lymphatics be a problem when you have an autoimmune disease or chronic pain of all different types. It just manifests itself in different ways. The underlying cause of chronic disease is inflammation. And when you have full body systemic inflammation, then everybody will manifest it differently, right? Some person might get this label of a disease with inflammation, and then you'll get labeled another one, even though the underlying cause is what? Inflammation, right? So you still have to go back to the same thing I talked about before, deficiency and toxicity. So when I work the lymphatic system, here's what I know is that the majority of the time people feel fantastic and they say to themselves, oh my God, first of all, why in the hell didn't somebody show me this before? They get blown away, and then they get really upset, and then they say, why in the hell didn't somebody show me this before? And then they get mad. But then they're blown away about how easy it is. It's so simple because they think here's the thing, they don't believe it because if it was that simple, they figured somebody else would have told them by now. But that's the paradox. They don't tell them. And the solution doesn't have to be complicated to work, right? So the human body is complex, but it's not complicated. If you understand how systems of the body work together, you can find a lot of things about why the body does what it does. One of my favorite sayings is this: the human body is under no obligation to make sense to you, which means it really doesn't care whether you know why it's swelling up your ankle or not. But if you start to think like your body and you understand what it's trying to do, and then you're going to say to itself, I know why it's swelling up my ankle, because it's trying to protect my ankle, right? Or maybe it can't get rid of the swelling even though it's really trying to. So when you come at it from that standpoint, then it helps you put the puzzle piece together. So it's a little bit more of a, not an adversarial relationship with the body like you can get in Western medicine a lot. I'm going to kill this, I'm going to attack cancer, I'm going to kill that. And then Ayurvedic medicine, TCM, it's about synergy. It's about yin and yang. It's about energy. It's about harmony. It's about one. So when you have that type of reframe, it's a vastly different approach to healthcare and the relationship that you have with your own body, right? It's very hard to have that when everybody else is talking about killing something all the time or taking something out that's broken type thing.
Yep. So let's talk about that. So obviously, if somebody were to come into you, you help release that stagnant lymph. So you mentioned the two primary ways to move lymphatic fluid, and that is the movement and breathing from your diaphragm. So we know that. So I mentioned earlier when we were talking that I did dry brushing right before my shower this morning. And I also take a 3-minute cold shower, and I have a rebounder, which rebounder I just got. I'm hoping to use it every day, but let's talk about the ways we can move it on our own. I've heard of lymphatic massage. I haven't got one personally, but I do know and you could speak to this, that it doesn't need hard pressure to move, not like a deep tissue massage. It's actually more on the surface. So just like dry brushing, it's just a gentle movement of the fluid. Am I correct?
That's one way to do it. Yes, that's one part, because the lymph has different layers. You have what they call terminal lymph, which is the one that sits superficial near the skin that captures things, and then it moves that fluid. So it's beneath the skin, and then it starts to transport that fluid into different parts of the lymph system where they become bigger pipes, bigger nodes, and bigger trunks. So basically the way it works is small eventually leads to big, right? Okay. So it's okay if you do the dry brushing up top, that's good to do, but you have to remember that those are going to send it to deep nodes. And if the deep nodes are blocked, then you're still going to move fluid when you dry brush. But if you move it to a node that's blocked already, it's not going to be as efficient as if you cleared the big node, what I call node roads first. So the difference between my work is that my pressure is vastly different than most people who get lymphatic work. And I go after those primary areas first. So if you would like, I will use everything you just told me that you got, and I would tell you exactly what I would tell somebody to do with what you got, right? So we know that we want to, let's say you want to start to move your lymph. And we know that rebounding will move lymph. But you don't just jump on the rebounder and move lymph, because what happens if some of those big areas are clogged? You're just going to bounce up and down and drive things into jammed lymph nodes. So jumping up and down on a rebounder is great, but I found better success if you clear the primary node roads first before you do it. And then I clear these node roads before I brush as well. So here's how it would work. Here's what I would tell you to do. We know that the lowest pressure is at the collarbone, right above the collarbone. So I usually will have people take their fingers, and I know you guys can see me on video, some of you are listening, but you would be like above the collarbone and a little bit on the collarbone. And I have people just start to rub their fingers in there, back and forth, like you're giving yourself just a little bit of a rub for about 5 seconds. And then you can actually lightly tap that region as well with your hand, 5 to 10 times, so whatever you want. There's no magic number. And then you do the same thing on the other side. So you rub it right there a little bit, 5 to 10 seconds, and then here, just depending on what your time is. And so I've cleared there, and then I'm going to go at the top of the neck, right behind the angle of the jaw, and I'm going to rub there with my fingers up and down, and then I'll lightly tap there with my fingers on the left side and the right side. So I've cleared those two node roads now. So what I know is the lymph that's sitting on the top of my head and then up in my cheeks are going to start to drain down to the neck now, because I just cleared the big block regions. That makes sense. Then I'm going to go to my arm where my shoulder joins my chest. I'm going to rub there, and I'm going to slap there. I'm going to go to my abdomen from my belly button to the bottom of my sternum, and I'm going to rub there, like rub my belly back and forth or circles wherever I want. And then I'm going to slap and lightly tap my belly button above, right on the belly button and above. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go with my fingers across my groin, right in the crease of the groin. Then I'm going to slap the groin a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to rub behind the knees, and then I'm going to slap behind the knees. So I cleared from top down when I did it, and from here, and then bottom up to the top of the head. Now, if I want to brush, then what I'll do is I'll brush from the fingers up the arm, the fingers up the arm, from the foot up the leg. So then I do because now I'm driving the stuff in the arms and the legs to what? The armpit and the groin that I just cleared. You follow?
Yeah, I've heard about this, the tapping and everything, and that's so good to tell us that, because if we're at home and we want to, stimulate our lymphatic system, these are ways to get that moving and that blockage. So it's super important. And actually, the other thing to mention, I'm big on non-toxic skincare, non-toxic home supplies. So as we know, our skin organ is our biggest organ, and whatever we put on our skin will get into our bloodstream and our lymphatic system. Am I correct? Which again, if these products are toxic, you are putting that into your skin. It's absorbing into your lymphatic system and your bloodstream. So that is another thing that clogs our lymphatic system, right? With all these toxins and like you said, are breathing in toxic air and everything. And even when we're wearing these masks during COVID and all that, it's still, we are constantly surrounded by toxicity. It's just our environment is filled with it. So that's why it's so important to keep it moving, right? Doing these practices that you mentioned and learning to
you should do that. You should do that every day because you're always exposed to toxins. I'm so glad you brought the skin thing up because that's huge, right? I mean, most of the lymph in your body is located in 3 places: the neck, the skin, and the abdomen. Right? And then now when you start to learn about environmental toxins, here's the thing. Most people put more than one thing on their skin at a time. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily the single product that you're using that is supposed to be good for you. It's how in the hell does that single product react with the other 3 you just stuck on there? Because they don't look at that. Because then you put the 3 together, you get a completely different chemical reaction. That's just physics. That's chemistry. One product mixed with 3 is not 3 separate products. You just made a whole new thing. You don't even know what the hell it is. So we don't know the ramifications of that. I think we're starting to see that with how sick the world is and how kids are getting diseases, getting all these autoimmune diseases before they're 10 years old, all those things. So you cleared those node roads, right? Then I want you to jump up and down on your rebounder, and then I want you to jump in the cold shower. So you do the rebounder afterwards, right? And then there you go. So what again is that all those are going to move your lymph, right? What I'm trying to do is move your lymph the most efficient way because, listen, the lymph knows where it needs to go. It's not stupid. It knows where it needs to get. So I need you to rub those regions and open them up, right? So people can get sometimes obsessive compulsive of like, am I rubbing and doing it the right way? Yes, you're good. Don't worry about it, right? I just need you to get in there. Don't press too hard that you cause any pain. I don't want so many people feel like they can't do things to themselves or they feel disempowered because, they don't have the training or, it's complicated. It's really not complicated. When I show people this, they're blown away when I just show rubbing and slapping. But they shouldn't be because I go into a 2-day course. I show you in great detail what you're doing when you do that. You are changing blood flow and lymph flow, and you're stimulating nerves and joint receptors and your brain and so many things that you don't even know about when you do those simple techniques. It's just now that you know it, and then the order that you do it in, you're like, oh, well, okay, well, now it makes sense when I show it to you. And then because everybody has a right to release your own lymph nodes. I don't care what anybody tells you. And sometimes you have to see a trained specialist that has been in that work, because everybody has a sliding scale of what they need. So if you are dealing with some severe polyautoimmunity, more than one autoimmune disease, you've had body parts removed like breast tissue or past cancer issues, or you're under chemotherapy, then you want to probably go because you're going to have to do things slower when you do that, and then you have a different terrain on your body than somebody else who hasn't been dealing with that. All right, and then you can become self-empowered to do it on your own. Because I've had cancer. I didn't mention this before, but 18 years ago I had thyroid cancer. So they removed my thyroid gland, and get this, a significant amount of lymph nodes in my neck at the time. Wow. Which I didn't even put together because in my world, for me, I was like, okay, well, you took the thyroid out and the lymph nodes out, I'm good to go, right? Everything's great. No, then I didn't think to myself, well, why in the hell did you get thyroid cancer, right? So we know that you're going to get that if you have some toxicity in your body and the inability to have that toxicity deficiency ratio. So I didn't change anything about what I was doing to my body when I went through that. It manifested itself later with my autoimmune disease. That's how it came out later, right? And it'll find a different way to release itself. And then that one damn near killed me. Like I got very close, like I said on his podcast, where I was hanging on one thread, about ready to give up. And that's why I'm the way I am today, and I get very excited and I get very emotional because It's not something where I said, oh man, I went to a seminar on lymphatics and I thought it was cool and I think I'm going to teach it. No, I do it because I tell everybody without question, this work and then the reframe that I have looking at the body absolutely saved my life. No question, no doubt.
Wow. I mean, I completely agree. It's really self-empowering to have this type of knowledge that, you know, everything is connected as we talked about. And when we realize like our body is trying to tell us something, if we have inflammation, I mean, I think inflammation is one very obvious sign that something is off. And now it's just determining what it is. And we eat things that cause inflammation, like, you know, sugar is the number one cause of inflammation. And then also, of course, dairy, gluten, all these things. And so many of us consume it so often. And our body is rejecting it for a reason. We don't want to inflame our body. Of course, like our body wants to operate in optimum state. That's what it's meant to do. And it's here to help us. It's not here to, you know, cause a problem for us. And really, if anything, it's trying to tell us a message. So it's empowering to have this type of knowledge. And the fact that we could so easily, like you said, it's kind of no brainer. Like you were saying, if you're tapping, if you're rubbing, you're doing it right. You don't need to have a training necessarily do this. If you want to learn more about it, of course, somebody as yourself could teach us the knowledge behind it and to how we could continue to do this every day in our life. And I know I've heard about lymphatic massages. I haven't got one specifically, but I'm very intrigued by them because I want to see how they're doing it so I could do it myself at home, you know, without questioning, am I doing it right or am I not? So I know those work as well. Lymphatic massages I've seen before and after. So just that, you could tell how much fluid is just stagnant in one area. For example, the stomach, especially. I know I get that, the fluid just sticking around in my stomach. I try to massage it out of me, but there's a reason why it's becoming stagnant. So that's what's so informative to know all these things. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, those programs are great. I mean, I've studied a lot of different approaches to lymphatics, and you'll see they're all going after the same thing. It's just based on pressure. You know, they have different ways. Those are called techniques. Once you know the concept, you can have 1,000 techniques. The concept is very simple. You need to work your lymph, and high pressure goes to low pressure. Once you know that, then you find the technique that you like the most. And there's a lot of them. Most of the ones that I do, I studied in Thailand and Asia the most. Those are the ones that I found the most successful. And I do a lot of work with the abdominal contents and the deep lymph around the organs and stuff like that. So my work goes, when I see people, but I teach that also in my 2-day course, how you can move your own organs around, things like that. And
amazing.
Very, very empowering that you can do that as well. But yeah, I mean, you always want to be a continual student, always learning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe there's any such thing as final mastery. There's once you reach, there is no peak. There's always another level to go to when you do it. And it doesn't take really much to make some very big positive changes in your life. You know, I usually tell people, like, if you can do your lymph every day, like I just went over, just do that. Do your lymph, you know, jump up and down in place on the balls of your feet, because that's your own trampoline. Your own trampoline is your calves, right? You just jump up and down on the balls of your feet for 20 seconds after you work those regions. And then hydrate yourself. So drink more water than you're doing now. You probably need some electrolytes in there, because if you have a poorly functioning lymphatic system, you don't absorb water well. So you usually need to have electrolytes or some type of minerals mixed in there. Liquid minerals called trace minerals are my favorite. Cut down on the amount of sugar and dairy that you're eating. You don't have to eliminate it altogether, because that's not reality. And then try to walk 10,000 steps a day. Within a month, you'll be a monster.
Actually, speaking of that, so many people are sitting at their desks all day long now. They're on their technology all the time. So what would you suggest for somebody that's sitting for their work all day? How often should we get up and just move, just walk for a little bit? How often would you suggest?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no magic number, honestly. I'm gonna say the more the better, of course, right? So I'd rather have somebody, instead of getting up and doing a 1 45-minute walk, I want you to get up and do 45 separate 1-minute walks. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. So I used to tell people, when you get up and move, you just do shake-offs too. Shake-offs are where when you stand up, you just shake your arms and your legs individually, like you felt like they're a little bit numb, like you're shaking them off like that. And that makes a huge difference on increasing your circulation and your movement and stuff like that. And it's just a matter of, but no more people are home now, so you won't be so weirded out looking around the office and say, okay, Perry's lost his mind. He's shaking himself again.
Or turn up the music and bounce around, like get creative.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that the bouncing and stuff like that's primal play too. That's huge. And that's really therapeutic too, because when you bounce up and down, you move the crystal fluid in your ear. And actually, it can help decrease pain a lot, bouncing up and down. So that's why rebounding is so great too, because it works your vestibular system in your inner ear. Can really help a lot of chronic pain, especially in the lower back. But I always tell people this: little and often over the long haul, which means just small little things, or what I call little tiny action steps, can go a long way.
Absolutely.
And it's like compound. It's that analogy is like compound interest in the bank. Just little things here and there builds up, and the next thing you know, you're making huge changes, huge strides. And that's going to be the idea with commitment too. When I first started to teach the lymphatic system in the beginning, I learned valuable lessons. One, I had people do too much too soon, where it was too much for them to do, where it would be like, it's like 20 minutes long. It just wasn't realistic, right? And then the other one was, it was too much stimulation in the beginning. So they would actually begin to get rid of toxins too fast and feel worse for a while. So I learned that you just tiptoe in. So one, that takes 1 minute to do those 6 areas that I showed you. And that's stuff I said, you usually can do something 1 minute a day. Most people will do that. And then it's also not too much. So you shouldn't get that kind of like, oh man, I feel like I got run over by a truck kind of thing. And you get rid of the toxins type thing, which is a good thing. But you want to make sure that they can carry that baton over and then keep running on their own, because it's not realistic that the average person, when I show them something, is going to do it for 20 minutes. Maybe in the beginning, it's a new shiny toy, like 1 or 2 days you'll do it.
Yeah.
But then you won't. So that's why I designed 6 different ways to stimulate the system based on that initial entry point into one that takes a little bit more time, because there's something in there for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it's compound interest. So the little thing you could do every day to help move your lymphatic fluid. I love what you recommended as far as the pressure points and then tapping it. That's great. Like you said, it takes about a minute. And then you could do the little activities, like I said, a 3-minute cold shower, or you could alternate from hot to cold. That also, I know, stimulates the lymphatic fluid and also helps your immune system because of that reason. And then the rebounding, or just jumping down, on your calves, going 10,000 steps a day. Like, there's so many little things we could do, the dry brushing. So we recommended so much, and this is so informative. I love this stuff because I really believe that we could take our health into our own hands. And that's what this is. Exactly the reason why I'm bringing this episode on is because I feel that we are so hidden in the dark from so much information that, unfortunately, the United States system is not providing us, the traditional Western medicine. So there is so much out there that we could, gather our knowledge, our own knowledge about, and take our health in our own hands. For example, taking the lymph and working it around and releasing those stagnant points. So anyways, it's so informative. I love this stuff. And as I mentioned, the non-toxic products, that is something I think that everybody should learn more about, because what we put on our skin is going to absorb into our body. And that is exactly going to cause the inflammation, the toxins, everything that we do not want. And that is going to cause autoimmune disorders or other bad things that we never want to hear we could possibly get. So Perry, thank you so much. This has been such an honor. Vast amount of knowledge you just shared today. This is so great. I love this. So if you were to leave one piece of advice with us, what would it be?
One piece of advice. Well, I think it's kind of what I said already, but one, become empowered to take back control of your own health. You're smarter and you're stronger than you think. I have a lot of people that message me all the time saying, I'm not a professional. Can I come to your courses? I'm like, are you a human being? You're good to go. Like, you can learn these things. It's just, don't let the language of things intimidate you, because it's just concepts, right? And then anybody can understand a concept, and then you can do the thing is that small little things that you do can make huge changes in your life. And for me, the biggest one by far has been just that small lymph reset. I get messages every day, countless messages every week from people who say, thank you for showing me that. I had no idea about the system. I had no idea that I could do things myself. And I had no idea that I could feel this good again. And that to me means everything about that empowerment. So I know I gave you more than one, because if you hear me teach, it's impossible for me to give just one.
I hear you. Well, if people can't come to you directly in your office, where can people best find you, and also take that course that you talked about for the lymph?
Great. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, this whole pandemic changed a lot of things for people. I used to travel the world like 48 weekends a year teaching. So now I do it mostly by video and webcast. So you can find me on stopchasingpain.com. If you're on stopchasingpain.com, I've got anything and everything you could possibly want to start to learn. I've got a membership site with over 900 videos on different things. Oh, wow. I've got a videos page where you can purchase separate individual videos. Most people start off with the Body Aquarium Lymphatic Mojo. It's a 2-hour self-help streaming video that's through Vimeo. Which is a format like YouTube. Once you purchase it, you own it for life. You can always watch it. And then you can also do the 2-day intensive Lymphatic Mojo webcast. That's where I teach all of them. And it's about 7 hours a day for 2 days with breaks in between. Then you can come to that. And that's also recorded. And then you have access to that, as well as some special access groups afterwards for some support. And I do see clients. I'm talking to you from my office here in Waldwick, New Jersey, at my pain center here. So people that are around here can come to see me, and I do offer online consultations as well for people all over the world. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. I spend most of my time probably on Instagram, maybe an unhealthy amount, but I put a lot of free content up there and on my YouTube channel. But when you go to stopchasingpain.com, you can spider off to all of that stuff. And then if you reach out to me on Instagram, I'm the only one who does my Instagram, so you'll actually get me directly if you message there. I forgot. Yeah. And I also have my own podcast, the Stop Chasing Pain podcast, that I've had for 10 years, where I've
10 years. You're the OG.
Yeah, I had one of the original ones out, and I've just learned from a lot of smart people over these 10 years and documented my conversations with them. So if you want to hear some stuff that I talked about, but also from other people, you can go there as well. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me on your show. I love what you're doing. I love your energy, and I had a really wonderful time today.
Thank you so much, Perry. Yeah, this has been such an honor and so informative, and I knew you were the right person. I probably heard 5 minutes of the podcast on Aaron Alexander's, and I'm like, this is the guy I need, because I could tell how passionate you, and I knew you had the knowledge of the whole system. And I really want people to feel empowered to take their health in their own hands. And so this is perfect for the podcast. And I just thank you so much for your time and all your expertise. And I'm so interested in your programs. It's just so amazing what you're doing. And I'm so happy you're here, you're healthy, and you're helping other people get healthy as well. So thank you again, Perry.
You're welcome. And thank you everyone for listening.